Have you ever wondered what makes an argument, well, work? In a world that's just flooded with opinions and information, being able to make your point stick, and just as importantly, see how others are trying to persuade you, that's basically a superpower.
It's a huge question, right? I mean, we've all been there. You've got this brilliant idea, you lay it all out, and crickets. It just doesn't land. But then you hear a speech or you read an article that completely flips a switch in your brain. So what's the secret sauce?
Well, it turns out the secret isn't some newfangled marketing trick. Nope. It's a framework that's been around for over 2,000 years, and it comes from one of the greatest thinkers in all of history.
That's right, we're talking about Aristotle. He figured out that a speaker's power to persuade an audience really boils down to how well they can appeal to them in three key ways. And when you put those three ways together, you get what we call the rhetorical triangle.
And this is the core idea. Persuasion isn't just about throwing facts at people. It's more like a three-part harmony. The best way to picture it is as a perfectly balanced triangle, where each point is just as vital as the others for building a really strong, stable argument.
So let's build this thing out. The first corner is logos. Now, logos is all about the appeal to reason. It's the logic of your argument, the clarity of what you're saying, and the hard evidence you're using to back it up. You can think of it as the what of your message. Next up, we add ethos. This is all about you, the speaker, the writer. It's about your character and your credibility. It's the part of the argument that answers the audience's question, okay, why should I even trust you? It's the who behind the message.
And to complete our triangle, we have pathos. This is the appeal to the audience's emotions, their values, their beliefs. It's all about making your audience feel something and connecting your message to the things they already deeply care about. This is the why it matters for your audience. All right, so we've got our framework in place. Now let's zoom in and really take a closer look at each one of these incredibly powerful appeals.
This table really breaks it down nicely. Just think of it like this. Logos is about the text, the words, and the logic. Ethos is about the writer, their credibility. And pathos, that's all about the audience, their emotions and values. Each one has a totally distinct and honestly crucial job to do.
Let's kick things off with logos. This is your brain power appeal. Does your argument actually make sense? Are your points logical? Is your evidence solid? Is everything laid out in an order that's easy to follow? Any strong argument has to have a really strong logical backbone. Then we have ethos, your trust appeal. And look, this isn't just about having a PhD or a fancy title. It's about showing that you've done your homework, that you actually respect other points of view, and that you're a source people can rely on. At the end of the day, ethos is your ticket to even being heard in the first place. And finally, pathos. This is really the heart of the matter. You could have the most flawless logic and all the credibility in the world, but if your audience just doesn't care, your message is going to fall completely flat. Pathos is what forges that essential human connection, using shared values and emotional resonance. Okay, so this all sounds great in theory, but how do we actually use it? Let's start thinking about this triangle as a practical toolkit, something you can pull out to deconstruct arguments you see out in the wild and to build your own arguments to be way more effective. So the absolute best way to put this into practice is by learning to ask the right questions. Let's just walk through a quick checklist for each appeal that you can apply to literally any piece of communication you come across. All right, first up, logos. When you're reading or listening to an argument, ask yourself these things. Is the main point crystal clear, or is it kind of fuzzy and hard to nail down? Does the evidence actually support what they're saying? And is there a logical flow here, or are they making these giant leaps in reasoning? Next, let's put ethos under the microscope. Who is this person really, and why should I be listening to them? Are they telling me where they got their information? Does their tone sound respectful and appropriate for the topic, or does it feel kind of arrogant or dismissive? Even simple things like spelling and grammar add up to create a professional, credible feel. And for pathos, you got to think about the emotional journey. Is the language they're using vivid and engaging? Is the writer tapping into values that you hold dear, things like fairness, community, or freedom? Are they using stories or examples that make you feel something, that make you feel invested in what happens? Now, this is where we get to the real magic, because a truly powerful argument isn't just about being great at one of these appeals, it's about skillfully weaving all three of them together. The real key is balance. But the perfect balance isn't always one-third, one-third, one-third. You have to adapt. It all depends on your audience and what you're trying to do. For example, a scientific paper, that's going to lean super heavily on logos. But a fundraising ad for a charity, that's going to be almost all pathos. Context is everything.
And here's a really important piece of the puzzle. These categories aren't these rigid, separate boxes. They blend and overlap all the time. For example, when you quote a highly respected expert in your field, you're boosting your logos with strong evidence, and you're boosting your ethos by showing you've done your research and consulted credible sources. See how they work together? That interplay, that overlap, that's where the real power is. The most memorable, world-changing arguments are the ones that hit us on all three levels. They make perfect sense to our brains, they come from a source that we trust, and they speak directly to our hearts. Here's the cool thing. Once you learn about the rhetorical triangle, you really do start seeing it absolutely everywhere. In commercials, in political speeches, even in your day-to-day chats with friends. It's such a powerful lens for understanding the world. So my question for you is, which corner of that triangle are you going to focus on strengthening first?